Today is June 8th, 2018. This is a special meeting of the members of the State Liquor Authority. Present today in New York City are Chairman Bradley and Councilor Riano. In Albany, Commissioner Ford, Deputy Commissioner of Licensing Held, and myself, Secretary Donahue. We have one item on the calendar. It is item 1127B. It's a request for an emergency summary order of suspension from Council's office with respect to Turtle Bay Tavern Corp. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the Council's office.
Please don't forget to introduce yourself, Council.
Yes. Good morning. Miriam Sardar on behalf of Council's office, presenting a matter for summary suspension pursuant to Section 401, subsection 3 of SAPA. This suggestion for summary suspension is for the establishment known as Turtle Bay Tavern Corporation. This recommendation comes from an incident that occurred on June 2nd, just a few days ago, where a brutal stabbing occurred of 4 patrons that were inside the licensed establishment that night. One identified patron got into a verbal altercation with 4 other patrons that were there. The verbal altercation became physical, and eventually the unidentified patron pulled out an unknown silver object from his person and brutally stabbed 4 other patrons inside the club, or inside the tavern. The reason that the patron remains unidentified is because security that night failed to scan his ID. They stated to NYPD officers that once they recognize patrons as regulars, they don't scan their IDs, and they don't have any record of any scanned IDs on that night past 11:45 p.m.
Which would lead you to believe this person, at a minimum, was a regular.
Yes. When officers arrived at the establishment, security was uncooperative and stated that they weren't able to identify the perpetrator who stabbed 4 victims. Upon receiving information about this incident, the Special Operations Lieutenant himself distinguished that this was not just a slashing that occurred inside this establishment. This was a brutal stabbing that occurred that left 4 victims with severe puncture wounds. One of them suffered a fractured skull. People were stabbed in the rib cage, in the chest, in their forearms. They suffered lacerations. Aside from this incident that occurred, this establishment has been operating as a focal point during at least the last 6 months. It seems as though every couple of weeks, at least once a month, a physical altercation or an assault occurs inside this establishment. On April 21st, a female patron inside the bar was extremely intoxicated, and she had to be transported to a hospital by emergency medical services. The 17th Precinct also regularly responds to 311 calls complaining of noise. It's important to note that this establishment is located in a commercial neighborhood, but that the noise is so loud that neighboring residents complain of the sound of music and the loud noise that emits from this place on a regular basis. Officers have also told the SLA that they've had to respond to the location several times to ask the bar manager to keep the windows and doors closed so that the noise does not bother the neighboring residents. Right now we have 311 calls on file, which you can see as Exhibit 5, but we are also waiting for additional 311 calls to come in. A number of 911 calls have also been made to the 17th Precinct since the beginning of 2018. To date, we have 7 of them on file. Again, we're waiting to receive additional copies of 911 calls from the precinct. This establishment also has a disciplinary history with the authority. They've paid $5,000 in penalties in the past 5 years. So a total of 8 charges have been brought against this licensee since October of 2017, not including the charges in the instant matter. Just the sheer number of assaults alone that have occurred at this establishment in the past couple of months indicate that this licensee is failing to operate its establishment safely. And then the brutal stabbing of 4 patrons that occurred indicates that this licensee is failing to supervise his premises, is failing to prevent violence from occurring inside the premises, and that the continued operation of this establishment is posing an imminent threat to the safety, welfare, and health of the neighborhood that it's in.
Counselor, there was no scans past 11:45 p.m. How late is this place open?
I believe that this place is open approximately until 3 a.m., but I can verify the exact time in just a moment.
And the stabbing occurred at a little after 12?
Yes, the stabbing occurred at 12:15.
So I'm assuming the place emptied out after the stabbing?
Yes.
They have video? Security video? And did the police get that?
We have not yet been provided with the video, but we are working on obtaining it.
But did the police get it?
Not that I am aware of. Not that I am aware of that.
So I mean, the reason I'm asking is, were they cooperative in that regard, the bar? Do we know?
I'm not sure if the police have obtained the video, but from what I heard from the Special Operations Lieutenant, security guards at the premises were not cooperative in trying to identify who the patrons were or turning over any information about the incident that occurred.
Well, this place has been there a long time,
Right.
20-plus years, right?
Yes, they were licensed in 1997.
Do they have, I understand the history they have in the last 5 years. Do they have, has this been going on for 20 years, or is this something that's recently developed?
I believe that this is something that has been recently developed. I know that they have history in the past 5 years, as you stated. Unfortunately, I don't know what their history has been since 1997, since they've been opened. But I know that in the past 6 months particularly, they have, the 17th Precinct has had to pay special attention to the establishment.
And it's owned by the same person or persons who opened it, correct?
Yes.
In 97.
There was some corporate changes. The last corporate change happened in 2014.
But the majority owners remain the same?
I would have to look it up.
I think it's one individual who owns several bars is the majority owner.
I will note, Chairman and Commissioner, that looking at compliance, there seems to be an absolute uptick in 2017. Before that, I have a letter of advice in 2012, and then a dismissed disorderly in 2002. I mean, there doesn't seem to be very much, but then all of a sudden it does seem like there's a significant uptick in the last year.
I used to live in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
This place did not have that reputation, but apparently it does now.
And also, Commissioner Ford, for your answer, I am looking, at least in the method of operation I see within the packet, it does say close at 3 a.m.
Thank you. The four principals, I would assume none of them were here for any times that the police were there that you know of, Counselor?
Not that I know of, Commissioner.
So did they have any interaction with whoever the manager might have been on duty for any of these visits?
Not to my knowledge. That information was not provided for me, but I can follow up and get an answer as to who exactly was on staff that night, other than the security guards.
That's fine. You don't have to. I was just wondering. Okay.
So the one, I'm ready to vote whenever you are.
Yeah, I am too. But go ahead and say anything if you want to say something.
Well, the one, I noticed the one charge you're bringing is the sustained pattern of noise,
Yes.
which obviously the evidence would indicate that that's justified. I would just ask that you get witnesses to support it, because I've seen we regularly lose that charge as a result of not having witnesses.
Right.
And it's going to require somebody from that area.
Right.
And
We'll
that's
be
all,
sure to contact.
and that's all generated by 311 calls, correct? The noise complaints?
Yes, there's been several noise complaints that we have on file by 311 calls.
And 7 911 calls have already been received, I read. So,
Yes, the 791 calls were more for the violence that's occurring, the fights that are breaking out every couple of weeks inside the bar.
okay. I'm ready to vote if you are, Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Based on the fact that you have 4 patrons stabbed by one individual with reportedly uncooperative security guards, another patron a few months ago had a broken jaw, all sorts of ABC, fire code, building code, and administrative code violations, other physical altercations, 311 calls for noise, several 911 calls. I don't know what's happened to this place over the past 7 or 8 months, but apparently it's obvious that the management is losing control of the place, and it is without a doubt a danger to the health and safety of the public. So I want to vote for an emergency summary suspension.
I'm going to vote for a summer suspension as well. It's obvious that even though this place has been open for 20 plus years, that there is clearly a lack of supervision over the last year at least, and which has turned into violent incidents, and not to mention the lack of cooperation of the employees of the bar clearly has made it worse. I find it hard to believe that they could not assist in identifying who the perpetrator of the stabbing is. So I'm going to vote to summarily suspend.
Thank you.
All right, Chairman, I have nothing else for the meeting. Do you have anything?
No.
All right, then we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.